Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining and participating in our poll. Looks like we've got a nice diversity here on the line, and we look forward to talking to you today and sharing a little bit more about SALT. I'm Jenny Barker. I am the Chief of Party of SALT for Fishwise, and my colleague Amy West is our Program Manager, and we'll both be here sharing information with you guys today. We had almost 50 people pre-register, and it looks like we have people from around the world. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining us. Just some logistics before we get started. My goal is to do about 15 minutes of presentation, and then we'll leave 15 minutes for questions. Please feel free to post your questions as you have them in the chat box while I'm presenting. We'll also be sharing important links for you to access more information in that chat box and let you know how you can contribute to SALT's design. This will be recorded and available. So if you have colleagues who can't participate, we'll have it up on the Fishwise website soon. And if you are having any technical issues or issues with hearing me, just please put that in the chat if at all possible, and we'll do our best to troubleshoot with you. So I'm going to go ahead and get started and talk about, what is SALT? SALT is a global alliance for knowledge exchange and action on seafood traceability, and it's a public-private partnership between USAID, the Walton Family, Packard, and more foundations. As you know, illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, IUUF, as we often refer to it, depletes fish stocks, destroys marine habitats, hurts fishers, and weakens coastal communities around the globe, particularly in developing countries. And the corruption around these illegal trades also worsens other social problems, including labor and human rights abuses. Interest in seafood traceability as a way to combat IUUF has reached critical mass among diverse stakeholders globally. And over the last several years, many stakeholders have indicated a strong willingness to work together on seafood traceability, particularly on those aspects that really no group can solve alone. So SALT was developed with the knowledge that this is as much a social and political problem as it is a technical problem. And from what we've heard from people is really what's been missing is that central convener that can stitch together many different stakeholders and activities and put it into a more aligned and comprehensive effort. Central to our approach is the uniting of these conversations and work streams into one coherent dialogue. And we want that captured by a comprehensive and dynamic knowledge management system. SALT aims to fill the gaps on information and knowledge that people need to more effectively implement traceability solutions. So SALT is a 5-year contract. It's $1 million a year to cover staff and convening people and sharing information through that knowledge platform. SALT is not a grant program and will not be issuing funds. The funding that we have is really for staff time and the knowledge platform. And really this first year of SALT is what we're calling a co-design period, and we really want input on what SALT will tackle. I thought I might clarify a little bit, what do we mean by learning and knowledge platform? Essentially, there will be an online platform with analysis of existing data, and we'll do some original knowledge capture too on seafood traceability. We also may offer to match people with specific types of expertise with those who need it via that platform. And all of this is really still being developed, and we're still welcoming input on what that looks like. But some examples of original learning that we could capture around traceability could be a case study with beginning to end on how a supply chain has really scaled traceability efforts well. Maybe it's a really good example of how a country is tackling traceability. And we also really want to make sure that we include information around challenges that people have had around traceability. Adapting and dealing with failure is also a big part of what learning is. So this slide sort of captures some of the main themes that we've heard through interviews, from our experience, and what now has been validated in these first few events we've held around the issues that are surrounding traceability that SALT might tackle. So the first one being traceability is undervalued. Some groups may see the main reason for traceability as compliance with different legal requirements from different regulatory systems around the world. Some understand the value and they think it's really important to promote sustainable seafood. And then some people do it because they think that their consumers are really interested in where their products come from. However, people don't always think of traceability as important to the broader fisheries management issues globally, or maybe traceability is a tool to help improve human rights monitoring by collecting data on worker and labor practices. The second main area we hear about is around the information and technology systems that people are using for traceability and how they're struggling with them being narrow and ineffective. A lot of time, there are numerous solutions, they're varied and they range in their effectiveness. Many systems are not designed for different purposes or users, which would allow for easier sharing of data. And that interoperability is the issue. And when we say interoperability, we really mean the ability of different information technology systems or software to exchange and make use of the different information. And finally, collaboration is hard. While the will to collaborate exists and continues to grow, collaboration is a difficult space because people tend to focus on their specialized solutions that they can do alone. But we really think when you're looking at these really big challenges and systemic issues like IUUF, it requires a different way of working, and SALT really wants to enable a wide range of stakeholders to clarify their needs, challenges, and opportunities to work together and to address some of the issues that are best addressed through collaboration and collective action. So we have 4 objectives. SALT hopes to move the needle using learning and collaboration on these 4 areas. We think accessible and interoperable electronic catch documentation is important. We also want to increase the capacity of seafood producing countries to adopt catch documentation and traceability systems to improve their fisheries management. We'd like to incentivize industry to use traceability more to ensure the legality of their fisheries products and to improve supply chains and support human and labor rights. So how is SALT different from other initiatives? It's okay if you can't see this image that clearly, you're not supposed to. It's just meant to show that it's a big landscape. This is a quick mind map we've done internally of what we know about traceability globally and all of the different factors and facets. And then you consider all of the initiatives. We've heard a lot from people that there's so many things going on. We're not quite sure, I have this initiative here and this alliance here, and I'm a little bit overwhelmed by the landscape. So we understand there's a lot going on. There's things pulling in different directions. We actually think that's an argument for SALT. And we want to help to bring some coherence to the space, not duplicate efforts. And we really want to feature other alliances' work when it's appropriate and aligns with what SALT is interested in focusing on. Part of why Fishwise was chosen is we know this space and we participate in many of these alliances. So we really believe we can help figure out how to best coordinate and leverage each other's work. Let me speak to a few that we get the most questions about. The global dialogue for seafood traceability is one that we hear a lot about, and I'm not sure if David Shore is on the line. He had originally RSVP'd, and he is actually helping to lead this effort and is part of SALT's Co-Design Advisory Committee. So that's a great way for us to stay connected, but really the global dialogue is an industry-driven platform that brings together companies from different parts of the seafood supply chain. And to participate in the dialogue officially, you have to be a member of industry. They are really focused on looking at a universal set of KDEs for companies to adopt into their traceability systems. And so this is really complementary work, and we hope that SALT would be able to support the more widespread adoption of those lists and sort of what the global dialogue is working on. And so we're working and keeping in really close contact with them. Another alliance we hear about is the Conservation Alliance for Seafood Solutions, which is a partnership of more than 40 NGOs from North America, South America, Europe, Japan, and they look at collaborating to tackle really big issues around fisheries management, aquaculture improvement guidelines, policy engagement, and they do work some on traceability, but ultimately they are focused on working together to help businesses develop and maintain seafood practices and not really just exclusively focused on traceability and IUU like SALT will be. The Seafood Task Force is another group where Fishwise does participate with the work they're doing, and they're a really comprehensive effort focused on Thailand in particular. So while SALT would be broader than that one sort of country focus, we really think that there's a potential to learn a lot from what they're doing, and again, potentially feature some of their work. And finally, the Safe Oceans Network, which is a global initiative to strengthen aspects of fighting against IUUF, which has a really strong enforcement angle, whereas SALT is focused a little bit more on the learning and collaboration side. And that network is actually facilitated by the State Department, who is also part of the SALT Co-Design Advisory Committee. So we're really hoping to be able to leverage the work of other alliances, bring together some of that information, and see ourselves as hopefully leveraging that work as opposed to being duplicative. So in the first year, SALT is convening stakeholders across the seafood supply chain to define the problems they're encountering around seafood traceability and try to identify innovative solutions to move forward. This is what I'm referring to as this co-design process, which is supported by a co-design advisory committee consisting of leaders from government, philanthropy, industry, and civil society. And really these co-design findings will inform the plan for the remaining 4 years of SALT in the development of the learning platform. And so by bringing these people together in a series of convenings, we really think we can help to make SALT be the catalyst that's needed to create this sort of shared value. So our co-design is happening in partnership with an organization called Collaborate Up, and we're using their formula to really crowdsource and get different ideas and get input from diverse stakeholders. We call those meetings data labs, which is what you see on this slide. And there are 3 in the first year. They're geographically diverse, so we can ensure we hear from lots of perspectives and different people. And those reports are available online at the Fishwise website. So I thought it might be interesting to see, what do these events look like and who's been attending. This list is just an illustrative list. It's not exhaustive, but we've had about 100 participants so far with really diverse representation from different regions, from different NGOs, some industry players. We are really happy with the participation we've had, but we understand we can always improve. And so are always interested in hearing from people who really want to contribute to the traceability conversation and who have strong knowledge. But we also know that it's difficult for everyone to potentially travel to these different meetings. There are competing priorities, sometimes difficult to fund travel. So we thought it was really important to develop a survey that we could send out broadly to solicit input on SALT's design. And so we're having that open, I think, for the next, through the month of June, and really want to make sure we get input from people. So Amy is putting the link to that survey in the chat now. And you guys can please feel free to go take that survey and let us know, because it's really important for us to gather the data we need from everywhere so we can better design the SALT platform. The other thing I thought it might be interesting for you to see quickly is what types of solutions are being proposed. When we go through these data lab processes, people, talk about what the problems are, who it's affecting and how it's affecting them. And we think that process is really helpful for them to then think of what the solutions might be and how they might collaborate. So I have just a few listed in this slide. There's a variety of ways. Some of them are sort of validating that an information and collaboration site would be really helpful. And so hopefully what SALT is proposing will be useful. Other ones have talked about doing more specific analysis around different supply chains or testing what the real issues are between compliance and business mandates and what might help move the needle for industry on traceability, looking at best practices. There's really a lot of different ideas that have come out, and those you can explore more in the reports as well. So this is the final slide, and before we turn into questions, I really wanted to speak to how to stay engaged with SALT. And when we've been thinking about what we want SALT to be, we really see it as a spectrum, and there are a variety of sort of entry points to be able to work with SALT. And there's no official way you have to sign up to participate in SALT per se, but there are a couple of different ways you could think of actively doing it. So you can just kind of do what we're considering connecting, right? You receive updates on SALT, you go to our platform and you sort of receive information. You can also share information, right? So you can be more actively contributing data, information about your work, sharing some of your struggles and lessons learned to help round out the learning. You can also guide SALT more. If you want to be more actively involved, you can sort of contribute to shaping the issues that SALT might prioritize or focus on. You could offer to be an expert on the SALT platform, so you could answer questions if people have them are relevant to you. And then, you can also be, actively collaborate on an action or be a sponsor. So you could partner with one or more of your SALT peers to really look at working on a specific challenge around traceability. And, that can include, donating time and effort and talent to support a collaboration. As I mentioned, if you can't come in person to a data lab, that's okay, because you can still contribute and to the survey and the influence of the design of SALT for the next 2 to 5 years. We're hosting our final data lab in Bangkok on July 19th and 20th, and think that will also provide us a lot of rich information towards the future design. And then that sort of final way that you can participate is in partner lab. So the kind of culminating gathering that we'll be doing to help chart the path forward for SALT will be in probably late October or early November, and we're looking to convene people who are interested in doing more active planning around what they might want to partner on around traceability. That event will have some learning components where we can sort of listen to what we've heard from people where they need more information to sort of continue their work more effectively, and then also giving people time to sit and think about where they might want to collaborate together around traceability. And so that's another sort of key engagement point that you can be looking forward to. More information is forthcoming on where that will be. So let me stop there. And I really want to answer any questions you may have. Hopefully they've been coming in the chat box, and I'm going to ask my colleague Amy to read a question, and I'll do my best to respond, and we'll go from there.
Thanks, Jenny, and thanks, David Shore. He is in, and he's happy to answer any questions. So we have, it looks like Andre has raised his hand, so feel free to put that in the chat box or the Q&A. But we do have one from Joel Kirschner. I hope I haven't butchered that. So he's wondering what the handover would look like after the activity ends in 5 years, like who or what manages the knowledge management products, websites that may be created by SALT. It's a great question. We asked that too.
That's great. We always think about the end at the beginning, right? And it's an important point. Our hope would be that we would build a robust enough platform that it would be interesting that for someone to take on and assume some responsibility. I think Fishwise has obviously some interest and skills given their expertise in traceability of maintaining such a site. I also think that we could see some of the foundations that are part of this public-private partnership assume some responsibility for maintaining that site. But it's a really good question. And I think for me, that sustainability is really important. You don't want to spend all of this time building it just to have it sort of live on a shelf somewhere. I also know, though, that USAID is also, as a donor, has different platforms where they can at least host the information for long periods of time. So it's not like something would completely disappear, but I do think some sort of body to steward it and sort of push it forward is something we intend to work towards.
Okay, and we have another one from Luis Ramos. It's traceability is market driven. Yes. So how are the market actors reacting or engaging to SALT?
So yes, I mean, there is an aspect of what we want to be sort of industry voluntarily or sort of on their own implementing different traceability schemes. So industry interest has been pretty good, I would say. Their participation in the Data Lab events hasn't quite been as much as we would like, but we know that there is strong interest. Again, Fishwise has a lot of relationships and is known for their sort of partnering with industry. And part of what I think we've heard from industry, we've talked about it, is they're interested, but the co-design period is a little amorphous for them. So they're more interested in once SALT has sort of gathered all of this data and defined what it will become, then they're like, come back and sort of share more what the priorities and focus might be. And then we're more keen to maybe attend like a partner lab and really think more directly about what we can do once we have more clarity on what the focus of SALT will be.
Great. So does anyone else there have a question? Don't be shy. We're here to answer anything that you might have questions about. And we also have a final poll at the very least that we would love to get your feedback on. And I know it might be confusing. There's a raise hand and there's a Q&A, but try the Q&A button. Okay, here's your last poll. Did this entire webinar help clear up any confusion? Oh yeah. Then David Shore was talking about relations to other governments and participation in SALT. Does that mean, David, do you mean?
Sorry, let me actually look at the.
Do you mean some of the other alliances?
I'm trying to see, sorry.
Oh, like, or so Japan and Europe.
Mm. Sorry, I'm trying to find his exact question. I can't seem to see it in the chat box for some reason.
Oh no, it's just
sorry.
Talking about Japan and European, like who engaged on the side of SALT.
Right, yes. So we do think it's really important to engage other, what we would call consumer country actors. And so we do have their participation in the SALT Co-Design Advisory Committee to really keep those conversations happening sort of at all the different levels. I don't know if I think you all can see my screen. The image that's on here is actually a picture of a seascape that we do at the different data lab events that we have. And what we ask is sort of a way to understand who's in the room. People come up and they post where they're working and what they're doing around the world. And so we have this sort of producer country governments, this consumer country governments up on the right, and really thinking about what the different regulatory frameworks are and how those can be leveraged to improve traceability. And again, how we can also learn from different, the EU sort of regulatory scheme and how it's working and its effectiveness compared to other governments. So it's an important point that we do also engage those consumer country governments to get their input on how we can better promote a reduction in IUUF and using traceability to do that.
Did anyone have any lingering questions? Because we're coming to the end of the webinar. We will have another one tonight at 6 p.m. Pacific time in case you want to have all your friends signed up. This so we can reach the other part of the world. Unless you want to look at yours.
I don't think so.
I don't think you have any. Nope.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Chat. Oh, there we go. Sorry. Great. Well,
yeah.
If there are no further questions, thank you all for joining. And I really look forward to, hearing more from you all on the SALT website, which I'm not, if Amy has.
Oh, we got one new one.
Oh, okay.
Hold on. So one more question. We will make sure we catch this. Will you be releasing progress reports on the impedance to catch documents or traceability adoption?
Sorry.
Kimberly Warner.
Okay. Will you be releasing progress reports on the impediments to catch documentation and trace origin? Yes. I mean, I do think that's a big part of what we're hearing from people, that we need to sort of do a little bit more of analysis, whether it's in the middle of the supply chain or if it's at the sort of, on the coast in Ghana, sort of what are the barriers to doing traceability really effectively, and what are the challenges. And I do think that we hope to do the right analysis and sort of knowledge gathering and learning to share out such things. And we're going to be, asking again for people who are working in the thick of it and who are trying to do that work on the ground to figure out how we can best capture that knowledge and their experience.
Oh, well, thank you for all those thanking us. We appreciate your feedback. We really appreciate your time on the survey, especially if you couldn't type everything out here and want to just put it in that.
Yeah. And also, if just to stay engaged in SALT, if you go to the SALT website, which I think Amy has shared in the chat, you can register your interest. And so that way we'll know to sort of keep you involved and updated as we continue to move forward with SALT. It's a really exciting time, and we look forward to sharing more once we've done all of our data collection and letting you know kind of how SALT will move forward.
Great. All right, thanks everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
We'll tune in tonight for a repeat. All right.
All right. Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.